Hey guys, it's Ms. Muller, and today we're going to be looking at the reading passage from your Week 2 packet. So we're going to be looking at Day 4, the literacy passage called Cleopatra Finds Her Voice. So go ahead and pause your video, find Cleopatra Finds Her Voice, and get it out, and we're going to read it together. So you should be looking at the passage like this, and we're going to start by reading through it. So I'll read it out loud, and I want you to read along with me with the video. So it says, 11-year-old Princess Cleopatra sailed the Nile River on the royal barge. Her father, the king of Egypt, played his flute. They were sailing from their place in Alexandria to cities along the Nile. The king would often lead important ceremonies. Cleopatra watched for slithering crocodiles and yawning hippos. Sometimes she would catch a glimpse of a sacred ibis bird tiptoeing along the marshy banks. As the royal barge sailed, people crowded the banks, hoping to see the princess and her father. They sang and chanted and threw flowers, but it bothered Cleopatra that she could not understand what they said. Her father explained that the people of Egypt spoke Egyptian, while Cleopatra's family spoke Greek. So here we have a picture of Cleopatra and her father, and then the people. It says, but her father was ruler of Egypt. Why didn't he and his family speak the native language? They could thank their ancestors for that, the king said. The royal family traced its history back 250 years to the time of the Greek conqueror Alexander the Great. Alexander had conquered Egypt. When he died, his Greek general Ptolemy took over. Ever since, all of the rulers of Egypt had spoken Greek. Once back home, Cleopatra insisted on learning the Egyptian language. She believed that a ruler should know her people, and that meant knowing their words. Cleopatra studied hard and soon learned to speak Egyptian, but she didn't stop there. She also learned Hebrew, Aramaic, Persian, Latin, and some African dialects. She loved learning and excelled in math and science too. Later, when she ruled as queen, one of her first acts was to visit the city of Memphis for an important religious ceremony. This time, she spoke to the people in Egyptian. The people loved her for learning their language. She showed them respect and honor in many ways too. Cleopatra is remembered as a brilliant queen. She was the only Egyptian ruler in hundreds of years to learn the language of her people. So here we see all of her people with her. So now if we look at our questions, we're going to start with question number 1. It says, Part A, what does Cleopatra find out about herself as she learns to speak Egyptian? So I boxed the words about herself because we don't just want to know what Cleopatra learns, we want to know what she learns about herself. So I looked at each of the answer choices. Speaking Egyptian helps her understand her religion better. She no longer thinks her father is a good king. Or C, her family's old language no longer sounds right. And those things don't show anything about what she finds out about herself. This would be about her father, or her family, or her religion. So I found D. She realizes she has a love for learning. And I can find this back in the passage. If I look at paragraph 7, it starts talking about the language. And if I look all the way down to paragraph 9, I find my answer to number 1. It says, Cleopatra studied hard and soon learned to speak Egyptian. But she didn't stop there. She also learned Hebrew, Aramaic, Persian, Latin, and some African dialects. She loved learning and excelled in math and science too. So here's where it tells me that answer. When she starts learning Egyptian, she figures out she loves learning. If I look at number 1, Part B, it says choose 2 details that support the answer to Part A. So one detail we just learned is that she doesn't just learn Egyptian, she also learns all these other languages. So A supports it also. B and C are talking about the people when they first saw her, so that doesn't have anything to do with her love for learning. D is also about how they don't speak Egyptian, they speak Greek, so that's not about her love for learning. We want E, where it says she loved learning and excelled in math and science too. For number 2, it says, why doesn't Cleopatra's father speak Egyptian? And I chose answer A. Rulers of Egypt had spoken Greek for 250 years. And we see this back in paragraph 7, like I said, where it says they could thank their ancestors for that, the king said. The royal family traced its history back 250 years to the time of the Greek conqueror Alexander the Great. And then ever since, all of the rulers of Egypt had spoken Greek. Now if I look at question number 3, it says, which sentence best explains why Cleopatra wants to learn to speak Egyptian? A says that she hopes it will help her with math and science. B, she sees the love her people show. That's true, she does see the love, but she doesn't understand it. C, her father explains the history. Well, he doesn't explain, just the history doesn't make her want to do it. It's D, she believes that as the ruler of Egypt, she should know Egyptian. And so we see this in paragraph 8 where it says, she insisted on learning the Egyptian language because she believed that a ruler should know her people, and that meant knowing their words. All right, now looking at question number 4, it says this question has 2 parts. So part A, which words best describe Cleopatra? Frightened and weak, spoiled and happy, thoughtful and caring, or silly and careless? I chose C, thoughtful and caring, because she cares about her people and thinks about them, and that's why she learns Egyptian. And so which sentence supports that? It's B, she believed that a ruler should know her people. This shows that she cares about her people and is thinking about them. These other sentences show like she is a brilliant queen, but we want things that specifically show how much she cares, and that is believing that a ruler should know her people. The next question says, read these sentences from paragraph 6 at the end of this story. But her father was the ruler of Egypt. Why didn't he and his family speak the native language? And it asks what native means. So she is wondering why they don't speak the language of the Egyptians, so the language of Egypt, which is where they live. And so that is local. The local place is where you are, where someone is from, or where they are like living in that place. So local, the language of the local people would be the language of the people who live in Egypt, in that spot. Then if we look here, it asks us to complete a character trait chart of Cleopatra. So I said she was thoughtful, hardworking because she learns lots of different languages. She's smart, caring, and respectful. And so the actions, she learned Egyptian so she could talk to her people. She learned lots of different languages. She did well in math and science. And she showed her people respect and honor and ruled Egypt. So I can find all of these traits and actions. If I look back in my passage, talking about how she showed them respect and honor, she's a brilliant queen, how she learned to speak the different languages, how she believed rulers should know their people. So we can find evidence for all of those things back in the text. My first short response question asks to explain how we can tell Cleopatra was curious using 2 details. So I chose to go back to the very beginning. For question 7, when it talks about how she's watching for slithering crocodiles and hippos, and she's looking out from the barge to see all the people. So she's wondering about the animals, she's wondering about the people, and it bothers her that she could not understand what they said. So I'm going to use these details to write a paragraph. So I'm going to restate the question. Cleopatra is curious because, and then I tell you why. She wants to learn more about the world around her. When her barge sails through the Nile River, she watches out for different animals. That's what the detail we saw in the first paragraph. She's also curious about what the people are saying when they speak Egyptian, so she learns the language in order to find out. And then the last one, it says, now that you've practiced describing characters, write about how characters' actions drive what happens in the story. So because Cleopatra cares, because she is respectful of her people, what do her actions do that drive the story? So I restated my question. Cleopatra's actions make her a brilliant queen because she cares for her people. And then I support it. If she had not learned Egyptian, she wouldn't be able to understand or talk to her people. When she learned the language, the people loved and respected her as queen because her actions showed she respected them. So the last thing we're going to do is look at these vocabulary words at the beginning. It says words to know. As you read, look inside, around, and beyond these words to figure out what they mean. So it tells you to use context clues to figure out what they mean. So it says the word barge, I look around it, and it says sail the Nile River on the royal barge. So I know if you sail in it, it must be some type of boat. So I can look at the picture and know that a barge is a flat-bottomed boat. Well, the other one is ceremonies. So it says the king would often lead important ceremonies. So if the king is leading them, they must be some formal public event, and it's usually celebrating something. So that's what they are going to. So we learned about vocabulary words, using context clues, finding our answers in the passage, talking about the character traits of Cleopatra as caring and thoughtful, and we also looked at how her actions are affected by her character. So I hope that you learned something from this video. Keep watching and comment with any questions, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. Bye!